Okay, well, good afternoon. If you're just joining us, we'll take a moment to allow folks to join in. Really looking forward to this afternoon's conversation. And let's see if we can find our guest, Congresswoman Davis. I think her request is just coming through. Hope everybody had a great weekend, especially if you were anywhere near Washington. It was a really beautiful Saturday, and the sun's back out again and looks fantastic. So wherever you are, hope you're enjoying the turn towards spring. Hope you're keeping safe. I'm thinking of this as a great season to get more into biking to work. Not that it should have to be nice out for you to do that. We're trying to make sure that there's more and more infrastructure to be able to safely commute to where you're going by bike, no matter what the weather is. But it's certainly a little more appealing and enjoyable to think about it this time of year. And I hope that everybody's doing all right with this stage of where we are in the nation's struggle against the pandemic, the race between the vaccines and the variants. This is the time when we really have to keep our guard up because we see the light at the end of the tunnel. We also see the risk of what happens if we allow cases to spike. Okay, I think I see the request, so if I can hit the right button, shortly have Representative Davids with us. Let's see if this is going through. We got to do it again. This is when we are humbled in the face of technology, but we're going to make this work because it's going to be well worth it just as soon as she comes through. In the meantime, in the comments, I'd love to hear more about your favorite way of getting around. We oversee a lot of modes of transportation here. You probably know about the FAA does air travel, highways does our Federal Highway Administration, but we're also trying to make sure we draw attention to things like the maritime side, which we just had a big announcement on earlier today, supporting American ports and infrastructure. All right, the request came through, so we're going to try it again. Let's see if this time works better than last. It's thinking. There we are. How are you doing?
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. So thanks a lot for joining. For folks who don't know who I'm speaking with, you're about to, you'll see why I'm so excited to have a little time with her. Representative Sharice Davids from Kansas, the vice chair of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee in the House, which is one more reason it's important for us here at the department to be on her good side, and somebody who actually used to work here at the department as a White House fellow. Fantastic leader. She's a representative from Kansas's 3rd District, I believe, so a fellow Midwesterner, if I can presume to claim that the Midwest encompasses Kansas and the Plains. Conversation, especially as we're looking at the different implications of who's affected by transportation policy and celebrating Women's History Month. So Representative Vice Chair Davids, thank you so much for taking some time to speak today.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad to join you. I'm excited about how often I'm seeing you these days. I know you were just testifying in front of the full House committee about all of the exciting things that you're going to be doing over at the DOT. And you're right, I was there for a little while, and I left the experience calling myself a born-again transportation enthusiast because I got to see just how impactful the policy that gets implemented and created over at DOT, just how much opportunity can be created. And I think too many of us know that sometimes communities are given opportunities, and sometimes they can be cut off from opportunities, depending on the policy that we get to create and that I now get to vote on. So I'm really, really excited about the work you're going to be doing and getting the chance to work with you.
Well, me too, especially given your experience right here in the building and the things that are coming before the committee. So really looking forward to working together. And before we get into, we got a bunch of great questions that people across the internet suggested that I wanted to discuss with you. But I also just wanted to ask, so we were in committee not long ago, but the last time I saw you in person was in the Oval Office. And the president was joking with you that you were one step away from the hot seat because you wound up seated right in front of the Resolute desk. And I just wonder what your experience in that meeting was like.
Actually, it was a little bit surreal to be participating in that meeting. And I think hopefully you'll remember that I got the chance to kind of talk a little bit about how important the 3rd District in Kansas is as it relates to the national transportation and infrastructure policy being created. And I mean, it's the kind of it was really, really interesting to hear. It was really, really interesting to hear from my colleagues, from you, and from the president, just how committed all of us are to really building on and innovating when it comes to our infrastructure. And yeah, but it was cool. And I also had no idea how to respond. I like to think of myself as being witty, but I had no idea how to respond to the president's joke uh, about me jumping back behind the desk and making some decisions.
Well, you handled yourself really well, and the issues you raised and the passion you have for your district and the people you serve really came through. Maybe just describe the district a little to us and help us understand why some of the examples of all these policy issues that get talked about, like it's theoretical sometimes here in Washington, what it really means for the Kansans who sent you here to Washington to serve.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for asking, because I know that folks sometimes, if you haven't been to Kansas, might not really have a concept in your head about what the Kansas Third District even means. And we're part of the Kansas City metro area. One of my Congress besties, Emmanuel Cleaver, the Reverend Emmanuel Cleaver, works and lives just across the state line from me in Kansas City, Missouri. And then I get to represent the district that has Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County, Johnson County, and also a portion of Miami County, which is starts to look a little more rural. And that means that we have the full range of urban, a city. Kansas City, Kansas is its own city with its own unique history and vibrancy. And then you've got some suburban areas in Johnson County, and then you start to see what it looks like for rural folks to try to access things like broadband. We've got some great projects there. We've got some of the largest intermodal hubs in the country, and I'm sure there's a lot of infrastructure nerds on here, so I can talk about the second largest rail hub in the country being in our area, and folks can get excited with me about that. Or all of the intersecting highways and, the way that the Kansas and Missouri meet in my district, and just why all of that's so important.
Well, it's a great reminder of how different and just geographically diverse some of the places that we are talking about really are. I wanted to, like I said, we let folks know that we were going to be talking. A bunch of questions came in, so I just want to put a couple of them to you, and I'll offer some thoughts too. But one that just goes to the heart of our mission, which is safety, and the way it relates to equity. Here's a question: how can the federal government help state DOTs center equity in their planning processes? And at the local level, what can federal government do to ensure safety concerns from local citizens are heard and acted upon locally, especially, the questioner wants to know, when it comes to pedestrian and bicycle safety?
Yeah, I heard you talking about I think you were talking about your bicycle and riding to work. When I was in DC for my White House Fellows experience, biking was my primary mode of transportation. So there's a couple of things I would say to that. First of all, I think a place where the federal government absolutely needs to improve, and that's both legislatively on the congressional side, and also in the on the executive side, is listening. I think the most effective thing that we can do from a federal perspective is listen to our state and local transportation departments, but also listen to some of those regional planning and metropolitan planning organizations, and then also the advocates. Because I know there's a lot of people who are out there advocating when it comes to transportation equity, when it comes to making sure that folks, regardless of abilities or disabilities, are able to access our transportation system. Making sure we're doing these things in as an environmentally friendly way as possible, because all of this stuff is intertwined. And if if we aren't listening to the people who are literally living and breathing the impacts of our transportation policy, then we're always going to miss the mark. And so I think that's probably one of the most effective things we can do from the federal perspective. And then once we hear what folks want, what folks need, what they see as some of the best ways to approach these really heavy and like important issues, is to make sure that the resources are there and make sure that we're supporting our state and local governments in those things. And I know you talked a lot about that during your testimony last week, and I just have really appreciated that lens of one, you being a Midwestern mayor. I think that really helps because sometimes it does feel like, out in a place like Kansas, sometimes it can feel like from the national perspective, folks aren't really recognizing just how important investments in infrastructure out there are. But being able to listen is something I think that we could all use a little more of.
I think that's a great way to think about it. And sometimes when you're in something as large as a federal department, it's not known for being good at having an ear to the ground, right? But that's what these local processes are all about. And we're trying to make sure that the way we do things, even the way we do grants that come out of the department here, have really think about the importance of local engagement. And we really want to encourage that because we're not going to sit here in this building and figure out everything that's right for a community, right? We want to make sure the resources are getting out to the things that a community considers important. And I know the role that you play and members of Congress play is so important because you relate those two things, right? You can get our attention at the department, but you know what's going on the ground. And that's where so many of these things come together. You mentioned the climate side, and there were a lot of questions about that too. One way that one person put it was a question that said, we know we need safer, more equitable, and more eco-friendly transportation. And this is a smart question. It says, how will you ensure that all future transportation investments meet all of these sometimes competing goals? So how do you think about, we care about safety, we care about equity, we care about environmental responsibility. How do you think about those things relating to each other?
Yeah, it's interesting because I do feel like, the conversation around this has shifted a bit, even just in my short time, getting engaged in this. I wasn't in politics before I had the wild idea to run for Congress, but I did get the chance to work on some policy, and I think that from that time before I ran for Congress until when I arrived, which is still weird to think about. The thing that I feel like has been a huge shift is the concept of competing, environment competing with jobs, or environment competing with equity, or environment competing with innovation. And I actually think that what we're seeing is that when you take the holistic view, that's where we see tons of innovation. That's where we see lots of job opportunities. That's where we see, when it comes to things like the right to organize, these are not competing interests. In fact, they should be absolutely moving forward together. And that's the direction I feel like the conversation has been going with the folks that I've been talking to. And that's really encouraging because for sure, if we were thinking about these as being separate and apart from each other, it would take a lot longer for us to get to a truly equitable infrastructure and transportation system. But so long as we're thinking about doing what's best for the people, for the environment, and for our communities, I think that we're going to see. I think we're going to see great leaps forward when it comes to making sure that. I mean, if you want to talk about a place where we can have a real environmental impact, this is it. Dealing with our transportation and infrastructure system.
That's right. I mean, as you know, the transportation sector is the biggest contributor of greenhouse gases. in our entire economy. To me, that just means we get to be the best part of the biggest part of the solution too, because that's where the most action is. But all these things are connected, right? We know safety and climate are connected because a lot of times when we make these infrastructure improvements, especially if we're thinking about things like electrification, there are fewer emissions, and also this isn't just about climate, but things like particulate matter coming out of buses that go through certain neighborhoods and lead to higher rates of asthma, which then becomes an equity issue. All of these things are connected, and disturbingly, a lot of our most vulnerable populations, including Native Americans and Americans of color more broadly, are among those who are most vulnerable to being killed or injured in crashes. So I wonder also how you think that the safety question and the equity questions kind of fit together that way.
Yeah, I had the chance for a little while to live and work um, on a reservation, very, very rural area, and saw firsthand just how impactful thinking about pedestrians, thinking about bicyclists, just how impactful that can be. Because, when we're talking about rural communities on and off reservations, what we see a lot of times is less lighting than what would be optimal. We see, there are no east-west roads sometimes. There are no sidewalks or even ways at all for a person on foot to traverse without having to walk in on a highway or something. Right. And I think the more we recognize that that type of policy directly impacts people, and whether or not their statistical likelihood of getting hit by a car is higher or not. And I just think that we're in a time now where lots of folks are not just talking about it, because people have been talking about it. Folks have been talking about the environmental issues and the equity issues and or the equity issues as it relates to environment or safety for a really long time. And now we have more people who have either been elected or appointed, like yourself, who are willing to listen and who will take heed and actually believe people when they say, hey, this is an issue that's really been devastating for our community.
Yeah, that's where I think leadership really matters, is to be able to get out there and tell that story. Can you help illustrate a little bit, given that your district has a bunch of different kinds of communities, what's at stake in terms of rural areas? Because I think sometimes when we talk about things like transportation and transit, people picture the biggest cities that have the big subway systems, and that's really important, but just as important to be supporting a range of ways to get around in rural areas too. How do you think about that balance, and what would you want to make sure folks here in Washington understand about the needs of the rural residents that you might serve?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think the federal government for so long has had such a cookie cutter approach to everything, like a one size fits all. What works in Indiana works in Kansas, works in California, and we know that's not true. We know that the cookie cutter approach leaves people out, and sometimes that was intentional, and sometimes it wasn't. But right now, the opportunity we have is to be intentional about how we develop out these new systems. And I think the intermodal concepts that we're hearing from lots of folks about, whether it's in the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority, which is it's by state, so it's Kansas and Missouri, it's KCMO, it's Kansas City, Kansas, it's Johnson County. Has a pilot system to use micro transit, so someone can take a bus, your standard bus, go out to Johnson County from KCK or Kansas City, Kansas, get on a micro transit, a much smaller vehicle, and head to the place that they need to go, because it starts to get, things are further away from each other in Johnson County. And these are the kinds of things that we have to be thinking about. Does the bus system work there? And where it works, let's do that. where microtransit works, let's do that. Where we can have a hub, an intermodal hub for people to be able to bike in and then jump on a bus, or drive their car in and then
Right.
jump on a bus. I mean, the more of those kinds of things we're doing, the more interconnected we're going to be able to be.
Exactly. Folks who are just joining, I'm with the Representative Sharice Davids, who is Vice Chair of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, has already a number of leadership roles in Congress, including as a leader in the LGBTQ caucus, Equality Caucus, the Native American caucus, New Democrat Coalition, and just somebody who brings a lot of thought to her role in Congress, but also worked right here in the Department of Transportation as a White House fellow. She was assigned to the Department of Civil Rights, which is one of the most important offices here in the department. And I wonder, by the way, you have a bunch of huge fans in OCR in the Office of Civil Rights. So I wonder what you might want to say to your old colleagues there.
Yeah,
and
tell them
talk a little bit about your experience.
I mean, I loved my time. I really loved my time there. I had the chance to work on the Title VIII update order, which is like funny because I think anybody who does work in that space, they're like, yes, we needed to update that. But also, I got the chance to work on the Leadership Academy, which was a way to try to help engage communities. You know, trying to make sure that that one of the things that we do is engage folks as early as possible. So that was kind of two sides of the same coin, right? Like if we make sure that we're that our U.S. Department of Transportation and our state departments of transportation are really thinking about the civil rights issues going on. And then we also are educating and engaging with communities at the beginning of projects. Then we're less likely to get it wrong, you know, and that's everything from making sure that we're building in equity, making sure that we're adhering to the laws around civil rights, and that we're, and that we're really actually addressing the issues that people care the most about. Because, no one wants to wake up and find out that their bus stop got moved. Or that the bus route that they were using isn't going to be in play anymore. And the decision got made 6 years ago as part of a regional plan, but the community didn't get engaged by whoever was helping with the planning. So those are the kinds of things that I got to work on, that we're trying to address. It was really awesome.
It's a great point. And this is the work that your former OCR colleagues and their director Irene Marion are leading right now, which is to try to be ahead of things. Right? It's one thing to deal with a complaint after a decision has been made that runs afoul of the objectives of civil rights law. But if you can just head that off on the front end with the listening and the right process, then we have a better decision to begin with, and we don't find out about it when we're fielding complaints. On the subject of equity, we got a lot of questions about this too. One of the people on the internet who saw our call for questions pointed out that 7.4% of professionals in the rail industry are women, and wanted to know what we can do to attract, retain, and promote more women in the transportation sector like rail. And then we've been pulling the numbers here in the department, and I got to tell you, here at US DOT, our workforce is about a quarter women in a country that's obviously half women. And only 10% women of color. So we've obviously got a long way to go. And as, in fact, one unfortunate statistic I saw is that we're less than 1% Native American women here at the DOT. So somebody who led by example in that regard, knowing that here at the department, as well as the industry and the sector as a whole, we've got to do a better job of recruiting and empowering women. And we've definitely got to do a better job of recruiting and empowering women of color. What's some advice that you might have either broadly for a department or specifically to those women who are thinking about whether transportation might be a career for them?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, I don't know what the hiring situation is at the U.S. Department of Transportation, but I imagine if folks go to USA Jobs, they could probably check that out. I think that it would be really, really helpful for anybody who's remotely interested in helping this whole process to get engaged and check out the US DOT to see whether or not there's any opportunities you might be able to to fill. And it's funny because I feel like your team might be like, did you tell her to say that? I didn't, but I just liked my time there so much that I hope that others think about it. And
That's great.
then the other thing I would say is, it's transportation and infrastructure. Sometimes I think I remember when I was there, and I would say, "Oh, I'm in the Departmental Office of Civil Rights," and people would say, "Civil rights and transportation," and I was like, "Oh, you have no idea." It's some of the earliest civil rights cases during the civil rights era, when we were, when this country was dealing with segregation issues, came from the transportation and infrastructure space. And so I think that if equity is important, if access to opportunity is important, that to you, then exploring places to work within this sector could be really, really powerful. Because if we can address some of the equity issues in transportation and infrastructure, this would be this can open things up for not just our generation, but our children and grandchildren and great grandchildren. There's so many examples of times when whole communities have been cut off from opportunity. We can look at basically almost every major city, Chicago, Los Angeles. You can point to so many different examples of times where we saw intentional cutting off of communities, whether it was through highways or some other public transit system. And then I think the other thing is just it does feel to me like we are really moving away from this idea of tying sectors to gender for our kids. Like I talk to so many young people who, I'll ask them like, well, what stuff's exciting to you? And it just doesn't feel, at least the young people that I've had the chance to talk to during my time running all over my district, that we have the same almost like stigmas around gender conformity to a specific space, but we still have to keep encouraging our young people to do what's going to help them thrive. And anytime we talk to our young people about opportunities, just being as inclusive in that concept as possible. And my mom would always say that the best advice she got about raising me was that one of her high school teachers told her, don't ever squish her. And what she meant was like, if I say I want to do football, then let me do football, and that kind of stuff, because that's, we have to encourage our young people to do whatever it is that's going to help them thrive.
That's so well said. And you're right. I think that's breaking open now, and we really need to encourage that people may not see a lot of people who look like them in a certain role, but which is part of why I think your frankly your leadership role in Congress is so important. But the more we can make sure that for example, women and girls and women and girls of color see that there's a future for them, whether we're talking about policymaking here at headquarters, or whether we're talking about an engineering career that can lead to being involved in a place like FAA or out in the aviation sector, or we're talking about some of the fantastic apprenticeship and training opportunities just in the trades. I mean, really good living that you can make with the jobs that we're going to be creating, hopefully more and more of. The president's announcing, of course, his big infrastructure vision on Wednesday. And that's going to mean a lot of work for a lot of people. And we want to make sure that a lot of people is inclusive. That means everybody, because there really is tremendous opportunity for income, tremendous opportunity to build careers that I think will be coming about through these job creation investments. And that's where jobs and equity and climate and safety all fit together as we've been talking about here. So I think that's a great message. And I'm so glad you put in a plug for going on to USA Jobs and learning about the hiring opportunities that exist right here today in the department. Because you're right, we're hiring. There's always opportunities to be in public service. And I hope newer generations see how fulfilling and meaningful public service can be. Because we really need a generation to step up and be part of the future that we're building right now. And there's nothing like it. I absolutely have found public service to be the most meaningful thing you can do. And we got to make sure we're opening that up. Well, I know we're drawing to the end of our time together, but would love to hear maybe any parting words that you might have, especially if there's somebody who maybe is watching this on Instagram, not sure where their future is, especially young women who are thinking about, whether they might have a role in leadership, in government, in policy, in transportation. Would love to end with just one or two things you think that you'd like to say to them.
Oh, yeah. There for a second when you said if there's anybody watching, I thought you were going to ask if I had a shout out for anybody. And I was like, well,
that too.
I don't know if my mom is on or not.
Oh, wonderful.
You're amazing, Mommy.
If your mom is on, I want to speak to your mom for a second. I am an admirer of your work. Well done. And greetings from Washington.
So I think, the thing that I would say, just kind of in closing here is that we need at the we being like folks who are in the position that I'm in, or the position that you're in, to continue to just keep an open mind about how we can do a better job. We like you just got there to DOT. I've been in Congress for just a couple of years, and I feel like the most important thing I can do is keep an open mind, continue to learn, continue to listen, and then wherever possible and every time possible, especially as we talk about Women's History Month, or supporting people of color, Black and Indigenous and other people of color, just trying to make sure that we are finding ways to be the person that looks around the room and says, who wasn't included in this conversation before? And include those and include those voices, because the problem has never been that folks haven't been fighting for stuff or haven't had a voice. The problem for so long has been that there haven't been people in decision-making positions that have been listening.
Well said. Well, on that note, thanks a lot for taking some time, and thanks to everybody who followed along. If you're a follower of mine, take a minute to follow Representative Davids and vice versa. Her leadership is going to continue, I think, to be really important here on Capitol Hill. And I'll see you around Washington, or maybe I'll get a chance to come out to Kansas and experience the famous barbecue for myself.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And we should go for a bike ride at some point.
I'd love it. Sounds good. Count me in.
All right. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you. Great seeing you. Take care.
Talk to you later.
Bye.